우리가 세상을 살아가는데 중요한 것들이 참 많습니다. 가장 중요한 것은 어떤 것일까? 행복한 것, 건강한 것, 잘 되는 것, 돈 많이 버는 것, 출세하는 것이라고 하면 틀린 답일까? 하나님이 인생을 그렇게 만드셨기 때문에 그걸 틀렸다 하기는 어렵습니다. 그러나 그리스도인들이 어떻게 살아가는 것이 가장 중요한 문제인가라는 답은 거기에서 찾을 수가 없습니다. 오늘 말씀을 끝까지 잘 들으시고 인생에서 어떤 것이 중요한 것인가를 찾으시고 그렇게 결단하시고 그렇게 살아가는 저와 여러분이 될 수 있기를 주님의 이름으로 축복합니다. 오늘 성경에 부활이라는 말이 나옵니다. 13절은 단언적인 아주 강력한 말씀을 하십니다. 만일 죽은 자의 부활이 없으면 그리스도도 다시 살아나지 못하셨을 것이다 라고 말씀합니다. 이게 무슨 말이냐면 예수님으로부터 부활이 시작된 것이 아니라 이전부터 이미 부활 말씀이 있었고 구약 시대에도 계속 말씀을 하셨고 예수님도 그에 따라 부활하셨다라고 말씀을 하고 있습니다. 이게 조금 의미는 좀 다르지만 어쨌든 죽은 자가 살아나는 것 그리고 그 다음도 있지만 그것을 일단은 부활이라고 얘기해도 틀린 말은 아닐 겁니다. 부활의 사전적 의미는 죽었다가 다시 살아나다라는 뜻인데 부활의 원어적 의미는 그냥 일어나다 다시 일어나다 그런 의미를 가지고 있습니다. 다시 말하면 죽음에서 일어나 영원히 죽지 않는다라는 의미를 갖고 있습니다. 죽음에는 크게 두 가지 죽음이 있죠. 하나는 육체적인 죽음이 있고 또 하나는 영적인 죽음이 있습니다. 죽음이 있다는 것은 살 수 있고 영원히 살 수 있는 것도 있다는 말도 되거든요. 우리는 하나님의 사람들이기 때문에 하나님 말씀에 의해서 영원히 사는 길이 열려 있음을 믿으시기 바랍니다. 그런데 말입니다. 안타깝게도 영원히 산다는 것에 대해서 수용하지 않고 그리고 그것의 트집을 잡으며 끝까지 잘못됐음을 찾아내려고 하는 사람들이 과거에 있었고 현재도 있고 미래도 있을 것이라는 겁니다. 예수님 부활 이전에 구약 성경에서도 죽은 자들이 살아나는 경우들이 있었습니다. 또 이사야 26장 19절은 이렇게 말씀합니다. 주의 죽은 자들이 살아나고 그들의 시체들은 일어나리이다. 티끌에 누운 자들아 너희는 깨어 노래하라. 주의 이슬은 빛난 이슬이니 땅이 죽은 자들을 내놓으리로다. 사실은 죽은 자들이 살아날 것을 성경은 여기저기서 말씀을 하고 있습니다. 예수님이 부활하셨다는 사건은 역사적인 사건입니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 이것에 대하여 집요하게 부활을 부정하는 사람들이 지금도 있다라는 것이 안타까운 문제입니다. 오늘 이 말씀을 이어가기 전에 우리가 동영상 하나를 보기를 원합니다. 이 동영상 속에서 많은 깨달음이 있을 텐데 여러분들이 잘 보고 들으시고 그리고 이런 분들을 위해서 기도하시고 여러분들에게 새로운 가치를 지니시고 결단하고 나아가는 복된 자들이 되시기 바랍니다. 동영상 들어주세요. 긴장하시고 들으시고 그 내용을 잘 보시기 바랍니다.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the delay. I'm calling from Jerusalem. I have to give a lecture any minute. I didn't want to keep you waiting.
I'll cut right to the chase. So I've been doing research into the purported resurrection of Jesus, and I want to run a theory by you. Maybe the reason that the tomb was empty was because Jesus' body was never there in the first place. Because we know that the Romans used to throw the bodies of crucifixion subjects to the dogs, right?
Well, there's no evidence for that, but there are specific records that didn't happen to Jesus.
And what records are those?
Well, actually, the earliest recorded accounts tell us that Jesus was properly buried in a tomb. And the Romans did allow for burial of some crucifixion victims.
But then there's something that still doesn't add up to me about all of these supposed eyewitnesses. that claim to have found Jesus' empty tomb.
What, the fact that they were all women?
Yeah, because we know that, according to Jewish customs, women were deemed to be unreliable witnesses. Am I right?
Well, true. So why did all four gospel writers record that it was women who discovered the empty tomb?
I'm asking you that.
Well, if you were a first-century Jew making up this story out of thin air, then you would never say that women discovered the tomb. It would damage your case, not help it.
Okay, so maybe we're dealing with the world's most inept disciples.
Or maybe the disciples reported what actually happened and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay, all right, but you have to admit here that there is a gaping hole in all of this.
A gaping hole.
I mean, the fact that the Gospels are filled with contradictions about the empty tomb, okay? If I turned in a story that was this jumbled, I'd be out of a job. If we look through the Gospels, you start at Matthew, okay? Matthew puts Mary Magdalene and some other Mary at the tomb. You flip over to Mark, he adds Salome. You go to Luke, he adds Mary, mother of James, and some lady named Joanna. What is that? You need a Sherpa guide to sort your way through this mess.
Sure, there are differences, but that doesn't trouble most historians.
Why? Why doesn't that trouble? It troubles me. It should trouble them.
Because the core of the story is the same in all four. After Jesus is placed in the tomb, it's visited on Sunday morning by a small group of women, and they find the body is gone.
Now, you've studied law.
Yale law, yes.
And then you know that when policemen question several witnesses at a crime scene, they never expect the secondary details to be consistent as long as the core account is the same. In fact, if they're too similar, it's suspect.
That's true.
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about here.
The empty tomb is based on evidence, and isn't evidence your trade?
It is. Yes, but what if the resurrection is one of the historical details that was recorded incorrectly? How can we know? How can we ever know?
Lee, let me ask you something. Do you really want to know the truth, or is your mind already made up, regardless of the facts?
Oh, look, Doc.
I'm a journalist, okay? It's my job to challenge assumptions until they're proven otherwise. That's all I'm doing.
No, and I get that. But when is enough evidence enough evidence?
Hey, just because they said they saw Jesus doesn't mean they actually did.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Maybe the eyewitnesses of the resurrection, maybe they're delusional. You know what I mean? Maybe they only thought they saw Jesus. Or maybe it was like mind control or brainwashing. Rod!
You need to see a psychologist.
Oh, you think I got a screw loose?
Yeah, well, that's another story. But if you're talking about first century mass psychosis, you need to talk to a psychologist.
I'm already ahead of you. Rod! Hey, I need you to find me a good psychologist to interview. A psychologist, that's right. A guy with a lot of academic street cred, knows the human mind better than God does.
No pressure, kid.
Don't listen to him.
Dr. Roberta Waters, president of the American Association of Psychoanalysts, agnostic,
Agnostic, final.
and a leading authority on human behavior at Purdue University.
Indiana, great. Dr. Waters.
Hello, Mrs. Strobel. As much as I would like to help a fellow skeptic, what you're proposing is completely impossible.
But how can you say that? I mean, if Charles Manson can turn his followers into murderous zombies, surely the followers of the Christ cult could be convinced of their own delusions.
Listen, hallucinations are like dreams. They happen in individual minds. They don't spread like the common cold.
Okay, so a hypnotist turns a stage full of insurance salesmen into clucking chickens, then that's not really happening, or?
No, of course it is. The power of suggestion can be very profound. But it's one thing to be mesmerized into making animal noises. It's quite another for 500 people to have the same dream. To be honest, that would be an even bigger miracle than the resurrection itself.
And without an empty tomb, you and I, we're not even having this conversation. If Jesus recovered from his injuries, that solves that problem. All these people could have easily seen him, yes?
Yes, but I'm afraid that's not a brain issue. You need to speak to a medical doctor.
Of course. Dr. Waters, again, thank you for your time. You've been most gracious.
Forgive me for making you travel all the way out here, but when someone rings me up and says he wants to dispute the most significant event in human history, I feel it's important that we do it face to face. Don't you?
Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate your time. So, my line of attack is this. The reason the eyewitnesses were able to see Jesus after Golgotha is because he never died on the cross.
Because if he doesn't die, there's no resurrection, yes?
That's right. So whether or not Jesus himself or someone else took him off of the cross early, or if he fakes his own death, it doesn't matter. It completely discounts every aspect of the resurrection.
Right, the swoon theory.
Yeah, but he passed out. He didn't die.
I'm afraid there's a long line of skeptics in front of you with that hypothesis.
Including only 1 billion Muslims the world over who also don't believe that Jesus died on the cross because the Quran says so.
With all due respect to Islam, the Quran was written 6 centuries after Christ. I prefer my historical sources a bit closer to accurate.
I understand, but you concede that it's possible.
Mr. Strobel, I am a medical doctor and a scientist. I have seen a great many strange phenomena in my lifetime. But the swoon theory is rubbish.
Rubbish. That's is that a medical opinion?
You know, it is, actually. Swoon theorists tend to skim over the fact that Jesus was flogged prior to his crucifixion. Do you know what happens in a Roman flogging?
Yeah, the person is lashed with a whip.
No, not lashed. Scourged and pummeled savagely. You see, the cowhide whip is braided with metal balls and bone fragments. The flesh on Jesus' back would have been shredded. The very muscles and sinews themselves laid open to exposure. The flogging itself would have left Jesus in critical condition from massive blood loss, which is why he collapsed under the weight of the cross that the Romans made him carry through town.
Okay, so is it possible that Jesus survives being spiked to the cross?
Oh, yes, you could survive it, but it's child's play compared to what comes next in a crucifixion. Slow, agonizing death by asphyxiation. Come with me. The stress on Jesus' chest muscles would have locked his lungs into the inhale position. Right? So in order to let the breath out, he would have had to shove himself up using his spiked wrists and feet, scraping his shredded back against the wood of the cross, and then sagged back down again in order to draw his next breath, which he would have had to have done over and over and over again until utter exhaustion just made it impossible. And then inevitably,
he dies, in theory, but let's remember, these soldiers, they're not doctors, okay? So maybe they took him off the cross and they thought he was dead, but in fact he wasn't.
No, of course they weren't medical doctors, they were professional killers. Right? And they were quite good at their jobs. They had to be. If a prisoner escaped alive, they themselves would be executed. Mr. Strobel, the crucifixion of Jesus is one of the best attested events in the ancient world. And, if you will, the final nail in the coffin, the swoon theory, is this. When the soldiers thrust their spear between Jesus' ribs, do you know what came out? Blood and water, which we now know is a description of pericardial effusion as a result of death by asphyxiation. This is not a condition anyone could fake. And so to answer your question, yes, it is my medical opinion that Jesus Christ died on that cross.
Excuse me, doctor.
A moment.
But I have a real problem with most of the experts that I've talked to here.
Which is?
Which is that most of them are not impartial, and if I'm going to take a guess, I would say that you are not either.
And you would be correct, sir. Though I have learned that most impartial travelers who undertake this journey rarely remain so. However, I can refer you to one of the most impartial sources that I know. Would you trust the Journal of the American Medical Association?
Of course, it is a stellar scientific journal, and I will admit that. On the physical death of Jesus, clearly the weight of the medical and historical evidence indicates that Jesus was dead before the wound to his side was inflicted. Accordingly, interpretations based on the assumption that Jesus did not die on the cross appear to be at odds with modern medical knowledge. Doc, I gotta tell you, you're not telling me what I hope to hear today. Followed every lead.
At some point, young man, you're going to have to plant your flag on a mountain of uncertainty where not every question is answered. The human mind will never get to the bottom of every mystery in the cosmos. Believing in God, not believing in God, either way, still takes a leap of faith.
So you're saying, even in our disbelief, that we still take a leap of faith?
More or less. Me, well, I've come to my own conclusion. You're gonna have to do the same thing for yourself.
One of my heroes was C.S. Lewis, a man who began as a skeptic, much like yourself. At the end of his journey, you know what he said? He said, if Christianity is false, it's of zero importance. But if it's true, there's nothing more important in the entire universe.
Please soften Lee's heart. Put a new spirit in him. Remove from him his heart of stone and give him a heart of flesh.
The only way to truth is through facts.
The entire Christian faith hinges on the resurrection of Jesus. If it didn't happen, it's a house of cards.
You just have to show that Jesus died and was seen after.
How can we be sure of the reliability of those manuscripts?
Archaeologists have recovered 5,843 Greek New Testament manuscripts. Nothing else in history even comes close.
Trust the Journal of the American Medical Association. Yes, Jesus Christ died on that cross.
You're not telling me what I hope to hear today.
If it is true, wouldn't you want to know that?
The first recorded account tells us that he was buried in a tomb. The empty tomb is based on evidence. Isn't evidence your trade?
Faith is the evidence of things we can't actually see.
Any careful historian will see that the core account is consistent, even if a few of the secondary details are told from different perspectives.
500 separate people saw Jesus at the same time.
That would be an even bigger miracle than the resurrection itself.
The disciples reported what
People
actually
with
happened.
zero motivation for lie.
When is enough evidence enough evidence?
I felt something that is maybe more real than anything I've ever felt in my life.
This is not the condition.
It still takes a leap of faith.
But why would he do it? It's really very simple. Love.
All right, God. You win. When you became a Christian, I freaked out. I mean, yeah, I was scared. And I felt like that I needed to save you. And so I decided to set out to prove this was all a big con. And so that's what I've been doing all this time.
Your research?
Yeah, I mean, look at this. This is all that stuff. That's why I've been so distracted. That's why I went to California. I just had to prove this whole thing wrong. But I couldn't. The evidence for your faith, it's more overwhelming than I could have ever imagined. But it wasn't just the evidence, okay? It was you. You never stopped loving me. You never gave up on me. And I think because of that, God didn't either.
Oh. What? I mean, I don't think God gave up on you either, but what are you saying?
I can't even fathom that I'm gonna say these words out loud. I can't even fathom that I'm gonna say these words out loud. I believe.
이것은 픽션이 아니라 난픽션입니다. 사실을 근거한 내용이죠. 여러분은 부활하신 예수를 믿는다는 것에 대하여 감사하시기 바랍니다. 이 한 기자가 구원되는 이 장면을 보고 제가 얼마나 많이 울었는지 몰라요. 제가 이 긴 동영상을 보여드리는 것은 여러분들이 확실한 믿음을 가지고 예수 부활을 증거하는 사람이 되라는 것입니다. 과학적으로, 의학적으로, 고고학적으로 그 어떤 것으로도 예수의 부활을 부정할 수 없습니다. 왜냐하면 부활은 역사적인 사건이었고 진리이기 때문에 그렇습니다. 여러분, 한 지성인인 이어령 박사 얼마 전에 하늘나라 가셨는데 그는 철저한 무신론자. 그러나 그는 예수를 믿었죠. 그리고 예수를 증거하는 증인의 삶을 살았습니다. 사랑하는 성도 여러분, 지금도 아마도 예수 그리스도의 부활과 죽음, 이 모든 것을 부정하는 사람들이 주변에 있을 겁니다. 여러분들이 증인이 되셔야 하고 증인의 삶을 살아야 될 줄로 믿습니다. 고린도 교회에 바울이 편지를 보낸 사건은 그들이 예수 부활을 믿지 않았기 때문에 그렇습니다. 바울이 에베소에 머물면서 고린도교회에 보낸 서신서가 고린도전서 후서죠. 예수님이 공생애를 마치고 십자가에 죽으신 때가 대략 AD 33년, 그리고 이 서신서가 도착하고 이 서신서를 사용한 때가 그로부터 20년. 예수님이 십자가에서 죽으시고 부활하신 때에 15살 청소년이었다면 20년이 지난 후에 그 사건을 잃어버릴까? 잊을 수 있을까? 20년이 아니라 30년, 40년, 50년 지나도 절대로 잊을 수 없는 사건일 겁니다. 그때 예수님이 부활하신 사건을 한두 사람이 본 게 아니라 많은 제자들과 500여 성도들에게 보여줬다고 했습니다. 성경에 기록된 것만 그렇습니다. 그 나머지 사람들을 못 봤을까요? 예수님 부활하셨습니다. 할렐루야. 예수님 부활하셨어요. 우리 적당하게 대충 그렇게 해서 믿으면 안 돼요. 오늘 말씀의 제목이 예수가 정말 부활하셨나요? 라는 의구심을 가진 사람들이 얼마나 많은지 모릅니다. 공관복음서가 사용되기 시작한 때를 대략적으로 계산해 보면 그때 당시에 살았던 사람들이 아직도 살아있고 앞으로 더 살아야 될 사람들이 수두룩한 그때에 복음서가 기록됐고 사용했다는 사실 생각해 보세요. 그때 예수가 십자가에 죽으시고 부활하신 그 사건 현장을 다 봤던 사람들이 있는 시대인데 그 사람들이 15살만 되면 다 기억하잖아요. 아니 10살만 돼도 기억해요. 그들이 35살, 20년 지나서 봐야 35, 더 지나서 봐야 45, 55살이면 다 살아있잖아요. 그런데 그때 그 사람들이 다 살아있는데 예수가 십자가에 죽지 않았는데 죽었다고 하면, 부활하지 않았는데 부활을 했다고 하면 난리 나죠. 내가 그때 그 동산 왼쪽 오른쪽에 내가 살았는데 그런 일은 전혀 없었다라는 사람들이 여기저기서 나타났을 것이고, 왜냐하면 유대교는 예수를 싫어하잖아요. 놀라운 것은 그런데 그때의 기독교가 폭발적으로 부흥했다는 사실입니다. 사실이 아니라면 있을 수 없는 일입니다. 그런 역사적인 사건이요 사실임에도 불구하고 우리가 틈이 탄 신앙을 갖고 있다면 부활의 증인은 아닙니다. 이렇게 동영상을 긴 시간 15분 정도 되는 것을 보여드린 것은 확실한 부활 신앙을 가지고 예수의 증인이 되자라는 메시지를 전하고 싶었던 겁니다. 아주 교묘하게 집요하게 기독교를 말살시키려고 하는 갖가지 모략이 있었지만 여전히 기독교가 유효한 것은 그 모든 것이 역사적인 사실이었고 참이었고 진리였기 때문임을 믿으시기 바랍니다. 사랑하는 성도 여러분, 우리가 지금 이 말씀을 들어야 되는 이유는 부활절이기 때문이기도 하지만 이 말씀을 우리가 가슴에 새기고 증인으로 살아야 될 가치, 목적이 있기 때문에, 사명이 있기 때문에 그렇습니다. 14절은 이렇게 기록하고 있습니다. 그리스도께서 만일 다시 살아나지 못하셨으면 우리가 전파하는 것도 헛것이요 또 너희 믿음도 헛것이며, 제가 얼마 전에 말씀드렸죠. 성경에 나와 있는 말씀이 한 말씀이라도 바뀌어지거나 틀린 것이 발견된다면 저는 목회 안 하고, 목회 안 할 뿐만 아니라 예수 믿는 사람들 다 구원하기 위해서 내가 활동할 거다. 지금까지 그런 일도 없었고 앞으로도 없을 줄 믿습니다. 하나님 살아계십니다. 예수님 부활하셨습니다. 그리고 재림하실 예수를 우리는 바라봐야 되고 오직 예수 중심의 삶을 살아가는 하나님의 사람들이 되어야 될 줄 믿습니다. 생각해 보세요. 예수님이 십자가에 죽으셨습니다. 그때 제자들 어떻게 했죠? 겁먹고 도망가고 예수님 배신했습니다. 죽음으로 끝난 겁니다. 그러니까 다시 자기 지옥으로 돌아갔잖아요. 그 이후에 예수님, 부활하신 예수님을 만났어요. 그 이후에 그들이 어떻게 살았습니까? 철저히 부활의 증인으로 복음 중심의 삶을 살았음을 믿으시기 바랍니다. 그들은 모두 예외 없이 복음을 전하다가 순교했습니다. 제가 간단하게 말씀드려볼까요? 베드로는 로마에서 십자가에 거꾸로 달려 순교했다는 거 아시죠? 야고보는 헤로데 왕에게 참수를 당했습니다. 안드레는 수고디아, 헬라, 소아시아 등지에서 전도하다가 순교했습니다. 바돌로메는 아르메니아에서, 도마는 바데 바사 인도에서, 마테는 에도피아에서, 알페오의 아들 야고보는 블레셋과 애굽에서, 야고보의 아들 유다는 아수르와 바사에서 전도하다가, 제자 마띠아는 에디오피아에서 복음을 전하다가 각각 순교했습니다. 예수님의 부활을 보지 못했다면, 보지 못한 상황에서 이들이 똑같이 이렇게 순교할 수 있다면 이들은 다 바보, 천치, 멍텅구리입니다. 이들이 이렇게 복음을 위해서 헌신할 수 있었고 순교를 할 수 있었던 것은 예수님이 진짜 십자가에 죽으셨고 그리고 3일 만에 부활하셨기 때문임을 믿으시기 바랍니다. 세상적인 가치를 가지고 사는 것 좋지요. 그러나 우리는 먼저 오직 예수의 가치를 가지고 살아야 될 줄로 믿습니다. 가장 귀중한 목적 하나는 복음입니다. 전도하는 거예요. 영혼 살리는 거예요. 그 일을 위해서 최선을 다해 주시고 목적을 이루시고 부활의 증인으로 살아가는 하나님의 사람들이 모두 될 수 있기를 주님의 이름으로 축원합니다.